Hi, boys and girls. It is Wednesday. It's our second math lesson of the week. And this Monday, what we started working on was two-dimensional shapes. And we sorted some quadrilaterals. And one of those quadrilaterals we sorted was actually a square. And we were sorting quadrilaterals by their attributes. Today's math lesson, we're going to continue our work with shapes and learning about shapes. To start our math lesson off today, I'm going to read to you this story called The Silly Story of Goldilocks and the Three Squares, which fits perfectly into our reading unit as well, because we have been looking at the story elements of fairy tales. So first we're going to read this fun book, and then we're going to move on from talking about 2D shapes, and today we're going to do a lesson on 3D shapes. So listen to the story, and I'll be back in just a few minutes to share some more news about 3D shapes. A Silly Story. The Silly Story of Goldilocks and the Three Squares by Grace Macaroni, and it is written by Grace Macaroni, illustrated with permission by Anne Kennedy, and read aloud with permission from Scholastic Incorporated. This is a story about a girl named Goldilocks. She isn't the Goldilocks you know from the fairy tale. The fairy tale Goldilocks lived long ago, once upon a time. The fairy tale Goldilocks is the great-great-grandmother of our Goldilocks. Our Goldilocks lives right now. She is not at all like her great-great-grandmother, or is she? One day, our Goldilocks was walking in the woods. She saw a pretty house in the shape of a pentagon. It had 5 sides. Goldilocks was hungry and tired, so she went into the house. It was stupid to walk into a stranger's house like that, but that's what girls named Goldilocks seem to do. No one was home, but there were 3 bowls on the table. The first bowl had noodles that were shaped like triangles. Some of the noodle triangles had 3 equal sides. Some of the noodle triangles had 2 equal sides and 1 different side. And some of the noodle triangles had 3 unequal sides. None of the sides were the same. Yuck! Goldilocks did not like all these different triangles. The noodles in the second bowl were shaped like rectangles. Some noodle rectangles were long and skinny. Some noodle rectangles were short and wide. Yuck! Goldilocks did not like all these different rectangles. The third bowl had square noodles. They were great! All of the squares had 4 equal sides. Goldilocks popped the square noodles into her round mouth. Now Goldilocks was no longer hungry, but she was still tired. She looked around. She spotted 3 chairs and tried them out. The first chair was shaped like a triangle. Goldilocks tried to sit on it, but she could not. She fell on her you-know-what. Ouch! The second chair was shaped like a circle, and as soon as Goldilocks sat down, the chair rolled away. At first that was fun. Then Goldilocks fell on her you-know-what again. The third chair was shaped like a rectangle. It was just right until it broke. Goldilocks fell again. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Well, you know what Goldilocks saw next. That's right, 3 beds. Goldilocks tried the beds. One was shaped like a circle. Goldilocks hated it. And boys and girls, we can see from this picture that we know the word for this shape is a cylinder, because it is a 3D shape. Another bed was shaped like a triangle, and we know the 3D word for a triangle is a triangular prism. And she hated that one too. The last bed was shaped like a rectangle. It was just right, and Goldilocks fell asleep. And we know that this 3D shape is called a rectangular prism. The 3 squares came home. When they saw the big mess, they knew they were not alone. The 3 squares found Goldilocks asleep. They stared. Goldilocks woke up and she was scared. But she still remembered this: the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So Goldilocks ran straight out the door, and she never circled back. Goldilocks and the Three Squares. And one of the important things I wanted to point out about that book is that it has both 2D shapes, and it also introduces in the photographs, or the illustrations rather, the concept of 3D shapes. So I want to show you this picture right here in the book that we just listened to. And you'll notice that there are the cylinder, the triangular prism, and the rectangular prism that Goldilocks got to sleep on in the silly story. And those are the shapes that we are going to be looking at today. You are going to be learning, so here we go, learning target time. I am learning to describe and name some very important 3D shapes. And 3D shapes, just like 2D shapes, have very important attributes that mathematicians use to describe them. And we're going to talk about those today. And you're also going to get to go on a hunt to find them in your own house. I'm going to put our learning target up behind me right here. I'll put it right up here. I am learning to describe 3D shapes. The first thing is we need to know what that vocabulary word means. A 3D shape is a solid shape, but it's not flat like our 2D shapes, like a square. It has depth, and depth means it has width, it has length, and it often has volume. Some of the very popular shapes that you might see around your house are what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to show you a picture of them, and then your job is to see if you can find some. There are cylinders. Another 3D shape is a rectangular prism. A cube. And finally, there is a sphere. I'm going to switch it back to the camera so that you can see the activity sheet that you're going to be working with. And then we'll come back in just a few minutes and talk more about your 3D shape hunt. Hey, boys and girls, just like you found Goldilocks doing in the silly story of Goldilocks and the Three Squares, your job for math this week is to go on a 3-dimensional shape hunt all around your home. I want you to be an investigator, a math investigator, and figure out what in your house has some of the same shapes that we have been learning about in math in our study of geometry. What can you find that is cylindrical? What can you find that's spherical or shaped like a sphere? What can you find that is prism shape, whether it is a rectangle prism or a cube, which is a very, very special kind of prism? I hope that you can go around your house and see all the different shapes that are in your home. Trust me, there's a lot. We're back. I hope your shape hunt was just as successful as my shape hunt. I'm going to share a few things that I found with you and let you know some of the things that I found around my house. You might have had the same luck as me. You might have had different luck than me. First, I'm going to start with our spheres. This is one of my dog's toys, and it isn't a perfect sphere, but I sure thought it had a lot of the properties that a sphere has. It's round, it's definitely got depth and volume, so this was one of my spheres. Another sphere I found out in the garage in my boys' toys, and this is a basketball. Basketball also is a sphere. It has a circular shape, no sides, no edges, and I would describe this everyday object as a sphere. The next thing I was on the hunt for was some cylinders. They have 2 circles at the top and at the bottom. So when I describe the depth and the characteristics of a cylinder shape, here are some of the things I found. I found a can of soup, It has that circle 2D shape on the top and another circle on the bottom. And so those two circles, and then of course I have the very curved side around the edge that gave it that 3D shape and height. This was from a piece of our workout equipment, kind of goes around one of Jim's weights. And this is also a cylinder. Again, I can see that circle right here and a circle right here and that rounded edge along the side. I also found a candle. This one says Tiki Beach. Oh my goodness, wouldn't it be nice to be on the beach right now? But again, it has that circle at the top, circle at the bottom. Those are what's called the face of the object. I also had my tasty Coke can. And look at that. There's a circle at the top and a circle at the bottom. What cylinders did you find in your house? The last one, nope, not last one. They're kind of together though. I also have on there a cube and a rectangular prism. They're very, very similar. A cube is special because every one of its faces is a square. Now, I just used a math vocabulary word. I used the word face. A face is a special way that mathematicians describe a flat surface on a 3D shape. Remember when I was talking about the two circles on the cylinders? Those are what we call the circle faces, or the flat side of the cylinder. Another thing that I found was a box of crayons and a bar of soap, a box from soap. And when I look at both of these, they aren't exactly the same size, but they have rectangles as their faces. There's a rectangle here, there's a rectangle on the back, there's a rectangle on all of the sides, and we call those the faces of our rectangular prism. To help count the faces, I brought with me a ream of paper. These are like the reams of paper that we use at school. And you'll see that when I'm holding this ream of paper from my printer, I just put other printer paper on top of it so that you could understand how we would count the faces or the flat surfaces on a rectangular prism. And to keep track of them, I might even take a pen or a pencil and number them. I'm going to use one of these crayons that I happen to have right here in my box. So in a rectangular prism, I have a rectangular face on the front here, and I would say that this is the first rectangle face. So I'm going to record how I counted it with a 1. And then if I flip it over, I have another one that's exactly the same on the back. So this is the second face. Then if I turn, I also have a face right there on this end, and so it is the third face in my 3D shape. Going around, I also have one right there. So this would be the fourth face, and there's the fifth face, and finally, on this side, there's one more rectangle that is just like the one I found right here. So this is the sixth face. So another way I can describe a 3D rectangular prism is by looking at how many faces the object has. And now I can quickly see that this rectangular prism has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 smaller 2D rectangular faces. Your next activity, after you have looked at all of these shapes, is to spend a little time looking closer at the faces of the objects that you have counted. Just like I did with the soup can and the soapbox and the ream of paper, count the faces on your objects that you collected from your shape hunt. Also, don't forget, take a picture of your 3D shape hunt and upload it to the Class Dojo app so your teachers can see what you were working on.